Could it really be that one phrase, spoken with conviction, could bend reality to your will? That's what I asked myself the first time I heard it. It sounded too simple. Just a phrase? Just a handful of words? No complicated process? No rituals, no struggle? But then I spoke it. Not once, not twice. 8 times. 8 wins. 8 outcomes the world would call coincidence or chance. But I knew better. It wasn't luck. It was law. Spoken deliberately with feeling and with full identification. Because the words you speak with belief are not passive. They are creative. They shape, command, and instruct the unseen to bring about the seen. And here's the part most people miss. You're already using this power. Every day. Every time you say, I can't afford it, or things never work out for me, you're handing out instructions, and life obeys. Neville Goddard taught, your inner conversations are perpetually outpicturing themselves in your outer world. So this isn't just about speaking one powerful phrase. It's about understanding why it works, how your words shape your world, how the subconscious, which does not argue, does not reason, does not filter, takes your word as truth. This video will show you the phrase that changed my life. But more than that, it will show you how to speak in a way that aligns thought, feeling, and assumption, so that reality has no choice but to mirror your belief. Because the phrase is not a trick, it's a key. And once it fits the lock inside you, things begin to shift. Not through force, but through natural law. Let's begin with what words really are, and why they matter more than most realize. Words are not empty sounds. They are seeds. And the moment you speak them, they drop into the soil of your subconscious, the hidden ground where all manifestations begin. Now here's what most people overlook. The subconscious does not judge what you plant. It does not decide whether the seed is good or bad, true or false. It simply accepts and grows whatever it receives, based on repetition and emotion. Say, I always struggle often enough, and your subconscious makes it true, not because it wants you to suffer, but because it thinks that's what you want. You've spoken it as if it's already real. You've declared it. Neville once said, the subconscious does not originate ideas but accepts as true those which the conscious mind feels to be true, and, in a way known only to itself, objectifies the accepted ideas. So every statement, every repeated phrase is a kind of programming, a set of instructions written into the fabric of your experience. And the deeper the feeling behind it, the faster it takes root. Think of it like this. If you're planting a garden, you don't scatter seeds one day and dig them up the next to check on them. You plant them, water them, and allow them to grow in silence. You trust the process. Your affirmations, your declarations, are no different. So what are you planting? Are you saying money is hard to come by or no one ever listens to me? If so, you're not just describing your life, you're prescribing it. And here's the strange part. Most of us speak these phrases casually, as if they don't matter. But the subconscious mind is always listening, always accepting, always building the world around what it hears from you most. What have you been telling your life to become? What phrases have you made a habit? If you want different results, you need to plant different seeds. And it starts by watching the words that leave your mouth, because they're not just expressions, they are orders, they are blueprints. So the question becomes, what blueprint are you building from? Reality is a mirror. Your life is not reacting to your wishes. It is reflecting your beliefs. Reality, as strange as it may sound, is not something happening to you. It is something happening through you, as the mirror of your dominant state of consciousness. What you assume to be true, what you accept inwardly as fact, shows up outwardly as form. Neville Goddard made it unmistakably clear. Change your conception of yourself and you will automatically change the world in which you live. If you repeatedly say, I can't seem to get ahead, and truly feel that way, the mirror says, yes, here is more of that experience. If you affirm, I always attract what I need, and you feel that to be natural, the mirror responds in kind. It has no preferences, it only reflects. This is why the phrase you use matters, not just because of what it says, but because of the state of being it assumes. Every time you speak it, you are stepping into an identity. That identity becomes your reflection. Imagine standing in front of a mirror, scowling and asking the reflection to smile first. It won't. It can't. The reflection is not the cause. It is the result. Your external world is doing exactly the same thing. It's not your boss or your partner or the market or the economy. It's the mirror. It's you, projected outward and dressed up as circumstance. And just like a mirror, it won't shift until you do. So if your results haven't changed, ask yourself this. What reflection have I been unconsciously expecting? What identity have I been silently reaffirming every day? When you begin to change your inner speech, when you shift your self-talk from lack to abundance, from fear to certainty, from doubt to knowing, the mirror responds, not because it chooses to, but because it must. This is not a passive idea. This is law. And it's working whether you believe it or not, whether you apply it intentionally or not. Now that you know the mirror responds to you, the next step is learning how to shape what it reflects, through repetition, through belief, and through speaking only what you want returned. Repetition is not just a mental exercise. It is the tool that carves belief into the subconscious. At first, when you say, "I am wealthy," something inside might resist. A voice may whisper, "That's not true. Look at your bank account." But if you persist, if you continue to speak it, not as a hope but as a fact, something begins to shift. Neville Goddard taught that persistence in assuming the wish fulfilled will harden into fact. He didn't say hope, he didn't say wish, he said assume. And the key to assumption becoming natural is repetition. Every time you affirm your chosen state, whether that's wealth, love, health, or confidence, you are training your subconscious to accept it as familiar, as normal, as natural. And once it feels natural, it begins to show up externally without effort. Think of it like learning a new language. At first, the words feel awkward in your mouth. They don't flow. You stumble, but say them enough times, and eventually they become second nature. The same applies to the language of belief. You are reprogramming a lifetime of contradiction. A mind trained to speak of limitation will not immediately accept abundance. That's why you don't repeat the phrase to make something happen. You repeat it to shift your identity. Repetition softens resistance. It quiets doubt. It bypasses the critical mind and sinks deep into the subconscious, where true change begins. This is why the most powerful affirmations are simple. They are not meant to impress the conscious mind. They are meant to penetrate the deeper self. I am wealthy now, and it feels natural. Say it slowly, not with desperation, but with the quiet authority of someone remembering what's already true. It's not about saying it louder. It's about saying it until it no longer feels like a performance, until it feels like a description. And once that happens, your outer world has no choice. It must reflect the inner shift. So ask yourself, what belief do I want to make natural? What phrase can I repeat until it feels like the most obvious truth in the world? Because once belief is in place, the rest unfolds automatically. Live in the end. There is a simple but often overlooked truth in Neville's work. You must think from the wish fulfilled, not of it. To think of something is to keep it at a distance. You imagine it as separate, as someday. But to think from it is to occupy the state right now, before the world gives you any sign. This is what it means to live in the end. Living in the end is not pretending. It's not lying to yourself. It's choosing to mentally and emotionally accept the result as already achieved. It's allowing your inner state to reflect the condition you desire, as if it were your present reality. Neville put it clearly. You must dare to assume you are what you want to be and continue to assume it. This is not about wishing to be rich, but being rich in thought, in feeling, in identity. It's not about hoping for love, but walking through your day as one who is already loved deeply, fully, without effort. If you were already the version of yourself who has what you want, how would you wake up? How would you carry yourself? What would you no longer worry about? That's the posture. That's the vibration. That's the inner proof that bends the outer world. When you repeat your chosen phrase, "I am wealthy now and it feels natural," you're not begging for money. You're aligning with the consciousness of someone for whom abundance is the most ordinary thing in the world. This alignment does not come through force. It comes through quiet acceptance. Imagine yourself at the end of a long journey, arriving at the place you've always dreamed of. You don't force excitement. You don't demand it to appear. You simply feel the satisfaction of having arrived. You breathe easier. You settle in. That feeling is the key. Live in the end, not to trick the universe, but because the truth of who you are is always ahead of your current conditions. You're not pulling the future toward you. You're stepping into a state that already exists within you. The world will catch up. It always does. But first, you must arrive inwardly. If you've ever wondered what it would feel like to let Neville speak directly to your assumptions, check the pinned comment and let the words find you. Here is the phrase that changed everything for me. I am wealthy now, and it feels natural. Not, I will be wealthy. Not, I want to be wealthy. Those carry the energy of delay. But I am wealthy now, spoken calmly, with inner certainty, places you directly in the state of the wish fulfilled. And the second part matters just as much. It feels natural. That simple line quiets inner resistance. It tells the subconscious, this isn't strange, this isn't a stretch, this is who I am. Neville often reminded us that feeling is the secret. Without feeling, words are noise. But with feeling, especially the feeling of naturalness, they become creative instructions. Let the phrase sink in. Say it aloud or silently, not with strain, but with familiarity. Let it become like breath, effortless, expected, and constant. This phrase works because it aligns you with the version of yourself who already lives the outcome. It's not about impressing the universe. It's about impressing your subconscious. Your subconscious doesn't care if the current evidence says otherwise. It listens only to your assumption, and this phrase is a direct assumption spoken in the language of truth. For those drawn to deeper trust, an alternative is, "Thank you, Father, it is done." It carries the same power, completion, certainty, and surrender. But regardless of which you use, the principle remains. Speak only what you want returned. Speak only from the end. And speak until the phrase becomes part of your identity. You are not speaking for change. You are speaking from change. And once the inner speech is settled, the outer world cannot resist. It must conform. It always has. It always will. Gratitude is often misunderstood. Many treat it as something polite, something reserved for what has already been received, a thank you at the end of a transaction, a moment of acknowledgement once something desired has arrived. But in the realm of consciousness, gratitude is not an afterthought. It is not a reaction. It is a cause. When Neville Goddard spoke of gratitude, he never referred to it as mere etiquette. He revealed it as a state, an assumption of completion. He said, "Be thankful as though you had already received." And in that one line, he gave us one of the greatest keys to manifestation. Why? Because when you feel thankful before any physical evidence appears, you are claiming the reality of the unseen. You are no longer desiring. You are receiving. You are no longer waiting. You are resting in the truth that it is done. Let's look at it plainly. What do you feel when someone gives you something you've longed for? Relief, joy, completion, and naturally you say thank you, not as a tactic but as an expression of that fulfillment. Now take that same energy, relief, joy, completion, and bring it before the event occurs. That is the act of spiritual causation. That is how you speak directly to the subconscious and say, "This is already mine." And the subconscious listens. Neville taught that your feeling of naturalness is what brings about the desired state. He didn't say force. He didn't say intensity. He said naturalness. Gratitude makes the impossible feel natural. It gently anchors you in the experience of already having. And once that feeling takes root, reality must shift to reflect it. Think of it this way. A farmer plants a seed in the ground and walks away in confidence. He does not panic. He does not dig it up each day to see if it's growing. He gives thanks for the harvest before he sees a single sprout. Why? Because he understands the nature of the soil. He knows the process is already underway. Your imagination is that soil. Your spoken word is the seed. And your gratitude, that quiet, confident, settled feeling, is the knowing that the result is assured. Gratitude bypasses the mind's tendency to question. It quiets doubt. It dissolves the noise of when and how. In fact, when you truly feel grateful for something you cannot yet see, you stop asking about timing altogether. You stop trying to control the outcome. You stop waiting. You move into being. And that is what manifestation requires. Let's bring this down to earth with a simple example. Imagine two people using affirmations. The first says, "I am wealthy," but with anxiety. Their voice is tight. Their body is tense. They look at their bank account 10 times a day waiting for something to happen. They repeat the words, but they don't believe them. There's no feeling of completion, only effort. The second says, "I am wealthy," and follows it with, "Thank you." Then they sit back, not in passivity, but in peace. They begin to carry themselves as someone who trusts. They feel the energy of gratitude not as a performance, but as a recognition. This is done. Guess who manifests? Not the one who tries harder, the one who feels it is already done. Because gratitude is a signal that the wish fulfilled has already been accepted inwardly. It sends a message to the subconscious. This is my reality now. And the subconscious responds with fidelity to that inner acceptance. You can build this feeling. You can train it. Start each morning not with a checklist of problems to solve, but with a few moments of thankfulness, not for what might come, but for what is already true in imagination. Try saying, "Thank you for the wealth that is mine now. Thank you for the peace that surrounds me. Thank you for the love I feel and share." Let the words settle. Let them wash over you until they stop sounding like wishes and begin to feel like facts. You don't have to force the feeling. Let it rise gently. Even a small moment of real gratitude, felt deeply, carries more power than hours of mechanical affirmation. And here's something else to consider. Gratitude, when it becomes a way of life, keeps you in alignment long after the manifestation arrives. Because what you receive, you must remain equal to. You must continue to feel worthy of it, connected to it. Gratitude stabilizes your state. It keeps you grounded in the assumption that life is always working for you. That's the difference between those who manifest one thing and those who live in a continual state of abundance. The first chases results. The second lives in thanksgiving. Neville also emphasized that when you are grateful in advance, you are no longer seeking your desire, you are identifying with it. And that identity is the secret. You're not someone hoping to become wealthy. You're someone who already is. Gratitude is the evidence of that inner shift. So what does this mean for your practice? It means you don't have to wait for outer proof to feel blessed. You don't need the numbers in the bank or the keys to the new house before you say thank you. You only need to know that your inner state is the cause, and that cause has already been set in motion. Gratitude is not just a feeling. It is a declaration. It is done. Feel it now, speak it now, and let your world unfold accordingly. Because what you thank life for in advance, life gives you in return. With interest. Words are commands to the universe. There is a law, silent but absolute. What you repeatedly speak with belief and feeling becomes instruction. Most people don't realize they are speaking their lives into form. They talk about their day, their problems, their fears, their expectations, and they do it casually, as if words are nothing more than labels. But every phrase, every sentence, every idle comment is received by the subconscious as a directive. It does not judge. It does not ask if you were joking. It does not wait for context. It listens and obeys. Neville said, "Man is all imagination. God is man and exists in us, and we in him. The eternal body of man is the imagination." If imagination is God and speech comes from imagination, then your words are not weak. They are sacred. They are creative acts. When you say, "I can't catch a break," you are not merely describing your mood. You are issuing an order, and the world will organize itself to fulfill that order. When you say, "Nothing ever works out for me," that is not an emotional release. It is a decree, and decrees are powerful. Now imagine shifting that speech. Imagine saying, "Everything is always working out for me," with sincerity, not because you're trying to make it happen, but because you've chosen to align with that truth. That phrase, repeated often and felt deeply, becomes a new instruction, a new blueprint, a new assumption that life will carry out. Your words are not just reflections of what is, they are causes of what will be. This is why Neville stressed the importance of self-talk, the conversations you have with yourself when no one is listening, because those are the most creative of all. They are the most sincere, and sincerity is the language of the subconscious. You don't need to speak loudly. You don't need to convince anyone else. You only need to listen to what you've been telling yourself and choose a better story. Change your statements, and you change your state. Change your state, and you change your world. The universe responds to the tone of your inner voice. Speak as one who already has what they desire. Speak as one who is no longer asking, but declaring. Because in this reality, your words are not commentary. They are commands. Trust over force. There is a subtle tension that undermines many manifestations. It's the desire to make it happen, to push, to strive, to force results into being. But what appears to be determination is often something else entirely. It is fear dressed as effort. The one who tries to force the outcome is the one who doubts it is truly theirs. Neville Goddard made it unmistakably clear. You do not persist in trying to make it real. You persist in the assumption that it is real. That is the difference between trust and strain. One is restful, the other is desperate. Force says, "This isn't working fast enough." Trust says, "It is already done." When you plant a seed, you do not stand over the soil demanding to see movement. You do not scream at the roots to grow. You trust. You walk away knowing nature has already accepted your intention. You water it with care, not panic. Manifestation works the same way. If you are checking for signs, if you are searching for confirmation, if you are measuring progress by what you see, you are still doubting, and doubt neutralizes the power of assumption. The state you dwell in must be one of quiet confidence, a natural knowing that what you have claimed is already on its way to becoming seen, and it will not arrive faster through anxiety. It will not respond to your stress. It will respond only to your state. The moment you speak your phrase, whether "I am wealthy now and it feels natural," or "thank you, it is done," you must release it into the subconscious as a completed fact. That release is not passivity. It is the highest form of creative power, because it says, "I do not need to chase, I am already it." This is not about doing nothing. It is about doing from the right place. Inspired action comes naturally when it flows from assumption. Forced action is reaction, and it comes from fear. You'll know the difference. One feels light, the other feels tight. So ask yourself, am I moving from knowing, or am I trying to prove something to myself? Once the assumption is planted, your only task is to remain loyal to it, not by force, but by faith. Let the seed grow, let the law fulfill itself, and rest, knowing the thing you desire is already unfolding in unseen ways. Because when you trust, you stop watching the clock, you stop measuring delay, and in that silence, the miracle arrives. Conscious repetition transforms. There is a difference between repetition and conscious repetition. Anyone can repeat a phrase 100 times a day, but if the mind is distracted, if the body is tense, if the words are spoken without presence, the repetition becomes mechanical, empty, shallow, and ineffective. But when repetition is intentional, when it is felt, when it is paired with imagination, when it flows from the state of the wish fulfilled, it becomes one of the most powerful tools of transformation. Neville Goddard emphasized that the subconscious is most impressed when thought and feeling move in unison. That is where repetition becomes creation, not just in words, but in inner experience. He once said, "The subconscious is what a man is. The conscious is what a man knows." What you know intellectually has little power unless it is impressed upon the deeper self, and it is repeated feeling, not just repeated words, that makes the impression. So how do you use repetition consciously? You begin by choosing a phrase that reflects the state you desire, and you speak it not to convince yourself, but to inhabit the reality it represents. You don't repeat it with tension. You don't try to make yourself believe it. You say it with calm certainty, allowing it to become familiar. "I am wealthy now, and it feels natural." If that feels too far from your current experience, you can soften it. "I am beginning to feel wealth as natural to me." Or, "I accept wealth into my life easily now." The phrase is not magic. It is a mirror. It reflects your current self-concept. And through repetition, you polish that mirror until the reflection begins to change. Consider the way water shapes stone. A single drop does nothing, but consistent drops over time wear through the hardest rock. That is what conscious repetition does. It wears away the old identity, the assumptions of lack, the habits of limitation, until only the new remains. And the change often begins subtly. You start to feel different. You speak differently. You notice things you didn't notice before. Your decisions shift. Your posture changes. The world seems to bend slightly toward you, but it isn't bending. You are. Your state is changing, and the world, ever faithful to your inner speech, reflects that change. The key is consistency without obsession. Repeat the phrase with presence, especially in the moments when the mind is soft. Upon waking, before sleep, in stillness. Let the phrase become a rhythm, not a demand. You are not saying it to get something. You are saying it because this is who you are becoming. And the more you say it, the more you feel it. The more you feel it, the more it takes root. And once rooted, your world reshapes itself around the new assumption. So ask yourself now, what phrase am I willing to make part of me? What statement feels like a doorway into a new version of myself? Repeat it, with intention, with stillness, and with faith. Because repetition, when conscious, does not just inform, it transforms. If your reality is the reflection of your inner state, then it follows that your most important work is not in the outer world, but in maintaining the inner tone, the mood, the belief, the assumption, from which life arises. Neville Goddard emphasized that persistence in assumption is the secret. Not one intense moment of belief, but a gentle, steady rhythm of consciousness, revisited, reaffirmed, and allowed to deepen over time. This is not a frantic process. It is not effortful. It is a quiet return again and again to the feeling of already being the person you desire to be. Establishing a daily rhythm of conscious repetition and feeling can stabilize the state. You don't need complexity. You need sincerity and a willingness to feel the truth of your new identity, regardless of what the five senses report. Let's begin with the morning. Upon waking, your mind is open and impressionable. The boundary between the conscious and subconscious is still soft. Before touching your phone, before reviewing your to-do list, before stepping into the roles the world expects you to play, take a moment to remember who you are becoming, not as a hope, but as a fact. Sit quietly. Place one hand on your heart if it helps anchor you. Then repeat your chosen phrase slowly and deliberately. I am wealthy now, and it feels natural. Pause after each repetition. Don't rush. Let the words move through you. Allow the tone of your voice to carry calm authority. Speak not to convince but to inhabit. If the mind begins to wander, gently bring it back. Even if you spend only 5 minutes in this state, those 5 minutes shape the rest of your day. Throughout the day, treat repetition as maintenance. The world will attempt to distract, challenge, or contradict your assumption, not out of malice, but because it reflects past beliefs. This is why inner reinforcement is key. Use idle moments wisely. While waiting in line, driving, walking, or even during small tasks, return to the phrase in silence. Whisper it in your mind, not with effort, but with ease. I am wealthy now, and it feels natural. Let the phrase color your perception. When a bill arrives, don't react from the old state of fear. Let the phrase remind you of your new identity. Respond from wealth. Move from sufficiency. Choose from the end. You're not using the phrase to change the outer world directly. You're using it to sustain the state that eventually reshapes everything else. In the evening, as the body winds down and the mind softens, you return once again. Neville called this time, just before sleep, the state akin to sleep, a bridge between conscious thought and subconscious receptivity. Here, your words carry more weight. Lie quietly, let your breath slow. Then, in that in-between space, repeat the phrase. Let it blend with a simple imaginal act, a short scene 10 seconds long where the phrase is true, a friend congratulating you, a bank balance that reflects abundance, a peaceful expression on your face. Whatever conveys the feeling of done, repeat until you begin to drift, not with tension, but with satisfaction. This is how you build the rhythm. Morning, establish the tone. Day, sustain the tone. Night, impress the tone. Over time, repetition becomes embodiment. The phrase no longer feels like something you're trying to believe. It becomes the most natural thing in the world. And the world, always faithful to the inner command, adjusts accordingly. Everything you believe about reality might be wrong. In the pinned comment, there's something waiting for you. 400 powerful quotes straight from Neville Goddard. No fluff. Just truth that cuts through the noise. Feel stuck? Flip to any page. Need clarity? Let Neville speak. Ready to shift your entire perspective? Start there. If something in you is waking up, follow it. Pinned comment.